Hello and welcome to Rule of Carnage. This is a podcast or a video series, depending on which sensory organs you're using currently, where me, Mike Hutchinson, a designer of miniature games, and this guy, Glenn Ford, also a designer of miniature games, talk, shockingly, about the craft of designing better miniature games. And in this conversation, I think what we will examine is the question of I guess to put this in a negative light, are the mechanics of your miniatures game very, very unrelated to the story that you're trying to tell with that miniature game? Have you given a bunch of levers and dials and buttons to the players, which when pressed or the act of pressing sort of don't feel anything like what you're supposed to be doing? So if you're making a pirate game, do the mechanics feel like being a banker? Or if you're making a interstellar banking game, do the mechanics make you feel like a swashbuckling pirate? Glenn, do you want to give us a little bit of maybe a theoretical grounding in what we're talking about here?
Part of the reason this occurred to me is there's a concept mainly from video game design of Ludonarrative Dissonance.
Such a lovely word to say, isn't it?
I do like the word Ludo, and dissonance is very nice on the end of it. But what Ludonarrative Dissonance in video games refers to, it generally refers to a couple of things that people might know from video games, which are you're playing your game and then a cutscene kicks in, and either your guy is a million times better than you are, if you're playing like Devil May Cry and suddenly you just annihilate a million demons and then you take back over and you're just getting your face pummeled in by the things, or your guy is a complete numpty and like previously you're ninjaing around places, taking out loads of things, and then your Resident Evil cutscene kicks in and you get pistol whipped by one person and go down like a sack of spuds.
Or there's a very specific like character-based dissonance between like a sort of character that is regretting their life of violence and thinking about, retiring from this international life of crime. Yeah. And then every mechanic in the game is telling you to shoot loads of people until they're dead.
Yeah. So I believe the original statement of Ludonarrative Dissonance was in relation to Uncharted, a game where you are a lovable rogue, a basic good guy, sort of Indiana Jones type, and then during the game you murder hundreds of people with absolutely not a qualm, and nobody's like, this guy's a psychopath. It's like, what a lovable rogue. What did he just do? Kill everyone I've ever
Thank
known.
goodness for zombie games where you can just massacre as many humanoid figures as you like, and there's no questions asked.
Still be a good guy. I always remember there was a car combat game where I think one of the versions, all the blood was green, because then it was okay. It's exact same game.
Yeah, that was Carmageddon, and maybe it was in Germany. They had to green up the blood. Right. So we're dealing here with a disjunction between what the game is trying to tell you it's about and what the actual game is about mechanically.
And so for our games, I think there's two sorts of places that something Ludonarrative Dissonance goes on. The first one I think is quite direct, and that's one of these things where the background of a miniature or a unit or a force doesn't match up to what they do on the tabletop. It's like we were playing Adeptus Titanicus, and in Adeptus Titanicus, every single weapon and every single miniature has these insanely hyperbolic names and supposed abilities, but because everything else in the game is an equal level of insane hyperbole, you fire your massive, awesome Ultimo Death Cannon of Doom at somebody and do like one wound, and it's just constantly like,
well, because they have a super turbo Nova shield.
I know, but I would rather you just called it, standard gun, and then they'd have to feel like, oh, look at my Uber cannon. But there is this moment, and I hate sort of having a go at GW, but sometimes there are times in my history with GW where, somebody's been trying to sell something and they sort of go, this is the best unit in the entire world, you put this on the tabletop and everybody will fall before you, and you see young kids coming in and pulling that unit out and it just getting crushed immediately as soon as it hits the tabletop, and you're like, yeah, because not everything can be that's not how balanced games work. You can't say those things. It's never
and it's also not how interesting stories work, where in a superhero yarn where the superhero has tremendous powers, like there has to be a Achilles heel, and they have to, the bad guy has to find the kryptonite, and then it's suddenly interesting again.
Like one of my favorite sort of things in games for a long time was like when I first played Malifaux, and I was always a resurrectionist player, and I like to play Sheamus, and the way that Sheamus played, certainly in the first couple of editions of Malifaux, and the way he is described as acting in the background match perfectly. The background description of Sheamus in those first editions could be a tactics guide for playing him. It's like to run in, cause as much chaos as you can, make everything go mad, and as long as nobody really knows what they're doing, you're going to probably win. And I always thought that was a perfect matching of Ludo story and gameplay connection. And I do think it is something that you need to consider, is like how what you're saying a thing can do has to do with what it does do, and you can help sort of signpost your players and guide them around your game. But that ultimately isn't the main sort of body of where I think we deal with things like ludonarrative dissonance.
Right, because this is essentially this first part is essentially a source of sort of disappointment or kind of letdown, insofar as you set some players' expectations and then you didn't really meet the expectations. And I think that as I think you're about to describe, like there's a more fundamental dysfunction that you can get in a game.
Yeah, I think relatively speaking, it's a kind of minor concern, because
it's quite fixable.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm about to say. Is our cutscenes are not carefully rendered with hours of work by hundreds of artists and people working together. Our cutscenes are us with a pen going, "This guy's awesome," and then you look at it and you go, "Scribble, scribble, scribble. This guy's a numpty." And people like models that are absolutely useless as much as they like ones that are awesomely powerful. I think that's one of as long as they're balanced. People love fielding all snotling and all halfling teams in Blood Bowl and running goblin masses in mass battle games. There's always somebody who likes to play the absolute underdog. So long as you get more of them as the other people, it's fine. Not everything has to be the most awesome, the fastest gun in the West. That is not a necessity. And so you can fix that with a stroke of the pen. I think that what we have that's our kind of problem with this is what I think of as a break between the sort of the back end and the front end experience of your game. That there's a back end experience that is about manipulating the levers and working the engine and turning the cogs. And there's a front end experience which is what that is meant to be representing, that's meant to be creating as people's minds. And I think an example from our back catalogue is Gaslands is in many places quite a sort of quick and dirty game. That it's sort of, chuck some dice, roll things around, you get an output pretty quickly, you get there's a set of sharp little feedback loops in Gaslands where you get a little game here and you get a little game here.
Right, yeah, even just like the eyeballing the templates and going, which one? It has to be this one. Okay, damn it.
Yeah, whereas A Billion Suns, is expansive in its nature. You have to,
it's analytical in its nature. Like you're encouraged to get your protractor out and get your calculator out and figure out whether you've got enough profit and whether you've got enough angles and exactly what should go where, because it's trying to communicate something very different.
Yeah, a Billion Suns is not a space game about the guy in the X-Wing and the TIE Fighter. It's a space game about a guy with a spreadsheet somewhere with his overheads listed on it, who has like one eye on the profit margin as much as he has.
Right. It's about a giant green and black tactical display light years away from the combat zone, with someone going, oh, there's got to be a solution here, and trying to figure it out whilst spaceships move, across many light years towards each other across potentially hours.
Yeah, it's like, a Billion Suns is a game that really wants you to care about like the profit margins and the numbers, because it wants you to feel like somebody who cares about that, in a way that Gaslands does not want you to care about, like, the even the hull points left on your vehicle. Really, it wants you to kind of go, oh, looks like I can be dead in a minute, that'll be.
And it's maybe a kind of a dumb way to go about designing games, because if you like Gaslands, there's a fairly high chance you don't like A Billion Suns, because they're just doing completely different things, which is just a silly way of creating a catalogue of games. But I think the thing that I am especially delighted by, indeed, like I can't really understand what the point of designing games is, other than creating mechanical systems on the back end that, when manipulated, produce results that feel like the thing that you were trying to evoke. And because the entire game is manipulating the levers, there's literally nothing else. Like, if the levers don't feel right, your game is wrong. Like, it just isn't doing its job of maybe the game engine is great, but you need to change the theme and tell the players that they are having fun doing something different, and then the sort of the lacquer on top will make sense compared to the thing that they're being asked to mess about with.
And so this is I think, like, at root, the question to be considered here is exactly how important is it, how much of a match between what it's like to pull those levers and what it's like to have the experience. Because obviously there's a level of abstraction and suspension of disbelief and etc. However much Gaslands is like being in a post-apocalyptic death race, it's obviously nothing like being in a post-apocalyptic death race. That would be a fairly unpleasant experience, if nothing else, and certainly wouldn't involve being sat down in an armchair at a gaming table. There are going to be breaks. The question is, like, where does the sort of the verisimilitude, the ludonarrative dissonance matter, and where doesn't it matter?
It's sort of it feels to me very much it seems to be very much in the sort of shared play experience of what are the game mechanics sort of encouraging me to approach the game with such and such an attitude. We've talked before about the sort of mission statement that you get in War Machine. Like, it doesn't matter whether or not you like that particular mission statement. What it does is provide a sorting hat for players, and then a set of basically instructions that say, filter all of the subsequent mechanics through this mindset. And so I think that's a fairly blunt instrument way of doing it, and it's fine. Like, I'm not sure you shouldn't consider doing that yourself, but I think that the way that we have approached it is to try and inspire that in a more like indirect way. It's like, well, when you add up all the mechanics, what you get is a play experience that feels like this, and if you enjoy that, you will end up playing the game in this particular way, and it's either more excitable, or it's more sedate, or it's more tactical, or it's more strategic, or it's more about laughing and cackling as all of the miniatures get taken off, or it's more about husbanding your resources and being extremely upset when one thing gets half wounded or whatever. And I think that for me, it's about, like, obviously the game experience has got nothing to do with the theme. Like, they aren't going to, it is, your cowboy game isn't going to feel like being in the hot sun drawing guns rapidly. But there's got to be something about the relationship between the players and the relationship between the game in front of you and your attitude towards it that has to feel somewhat related to the mental state or the attitude of the sort of, at least the key players that you're trying to evoke. And it's weird because I don't necessarily believe that there ought to be a representation of the player on the tabletop. So like sometimes when you play fantasy games, like big battle games, it feels like, you know, you're supposed to be the general, and maybe, you know, there might even be mechanics where your influence, you know, degrades the further from the general model that you are, or, you know, I'm supposed to be the pilot of this ship or whatever. And I'm not sure it's that direct, but it certainly feels like, you know, it's to a degree, like to a degree, it's a sort of power fantasy, or it's like you know, it's just a fantasy. And so wherever the most exciting part of that fantasy is, like I want to be dialed into whatever the kind of presumed, even if they're cinematic, the presumed thought processes and emotions of that player, and just find a sort of analog way of creating, you know, whether it's tension or peril, or, you know, the sensation of power or the sensation of hopelessness, or whatever it is that's supposed to be happening in that, you know, central character's mind. Like that's what your game mechanics need to be doing. And so if you've got analytical mechanics and you are experiencing analytical mental states, but it's about, you know, being terrified in a bunker while surrounded by gremlins, like that's wrong. It needs to be something different.
Yeah, I think that you have to sort of consider, okay, what does somebody need to know and understand when they are engaging with this part of the game? You know, what are they having to hold in their head to manipulate, and what does it feel like to do that? You know, because again, tracking back to Gaslands, it has lots of little sort of mini mechanics that don't necessarily super have to relate to each other. So you don't need to take a wide view, you know, of a lot of the pieces. It can just go, okay, well, this is the gear you're in, this is your gear you want to get to, these are the dice you've got, the dice are quite simple, deal with that. Now let's move on to this next thing. Like I say, whereas sometimes with other games like A Billion Suns, it's like you can't do this unless you understand that and that and that. And I want you to experience understanding that. I want that feeling of like mental crunchy pressure going on. It's, I mean, because this has partly occurred to me at the moment because I'm working on a game about, well, it's a game that has a sort of punk idea and a punk aesthetic, and we've sort of been talking about it, and a few times you're like, well, this is what being a punk is like. And it's like, okay, this isn't about being a punk, the game is punk, you are not a punk. And it's an attempt for in its where, like, how you present the game as you're writing in it, as you're explaining it to the player, and you're saying, you know, this is not a game that is precious about placements and measurements. This is not a game that wants you to care about this thing and that thing. This is a game that wants you to act like this and enjoy this and do this. And that's a game where, you know, I've put in a very, very physical resolution system, and a resolution system that repeatedly makes a lot of mess on the tabletop and then sort of takes away and reproduces it. So you have this very tactile thing going on sort of every turn, because that's what I want. That's what I want to recreate. I want to recreate this feeling of something that's very physical and very messy and doesn't have much in the way of dice and numbers, because those aren't the sort of the experiences that I want to put into that game and that I want people to feel and have recreated. And I think this is the thing. It's ultimately about sort of going, okay, there's the conceit of you are this person, which you do or don't need. But what there is as well, there is the idea of this is the feeling, and that sounds very sort of
no, that's right. That's right.
This is the state of mind that this tabletop is representing. I want you to have that state of mind when you look at this tabletop. Do you look at that tabletop and feel like, I am taking a mighty distant overview? Do you look at that tabletop and think like, I'm that 20-foot tall psychopath over there with the gun the size of a city. All shall fall before me. Do you look at that tabletop and go, I'm that dude punching the other guy right in the mush? What? And you're none of those guys, and you're all of those guys, and the overall feeling of what is this table about? What's it about when you look at it? And do the rules pay that out, and do they make you feel like you're in that correct mindset? It's a very nebulous thing, and we sort of decided to talk about this knowing it was a very sort of floaty idea.
It is nebulous, but it's also, for me, like almost the whole point. Like almost my entire pleasure in this craft is that moment where those two things click together, and the alchemy that occurs when you took what was essentially a set of unrelated, completely nonsensical, fiddly mechanics of like maths or manipulating objects, and somehow it communicates a feeling that's like, ooh, I'm doing something exciting, or ooh, I'm doing something scary, or ooh, I'm doing something analytical. And I don't know, like that's all of it for me.
It's funny because for various reasons I've been involved in quite a few conversations with people who are getting AI chat programs to write games and see what happens. And the thing that is instantly, and I'm not saying AI will never ever be able to do these things, but the thing that is immediately obvious to any of these attempts at games written by AI is, apart from the fact that they're mechanically just not even games, they just don't work at the moment, but the point of writing a game is about fundamentally whether or not it's fun, whether or not a human being finds playing it fun. And it's like, I imagine there might be a day when you can get a computer, an AI program, and without telling them, just copy what I did, that was fun. It can grasp the idea of, well, manipulating this bit of a game is enjoyable. But that's so far. There's something so.
But it's also the case that, like, as game designers, we have no idea whether it's fun initially. Like the first draft, like you have a hypothesis it might be fun. It's almost never fun.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You just have to keep chipping away at it.
The single hardest thing about any game design, and this comes up over and over and over when I talk to people, is just fundamentally making it actually fun. It's really, and this is, I suppose, the core of this thing is, it's so easy to write game mechanics. It's so easy to write rules. And it's one of the things you see from a lot of first-time designers is that there's a lot of rules in their games because they're kind of fun to write, and they turn a cog, and it's fun imagining the cog. Making something fun is backbreakingly difficult a lot of the time. The first play experiences.
But then I think back to the point of this conversation is, like, you got to make it fun and you got to make it coherent with the feeling and the story that you're trying to tell. And the thing that's fun might just be better off somewhere else in a thing about sword dueling rather than spaceship combat.
Yeah. I mean, fun here. I think fun here a lot of the time is that it pays off the offer you made to your players, and a lot of the time the offer you made is in that story moment, and then your mechanics have to pay it off, and if they don't fulfill what your promise was. Fun's a lot of things. You make a promise of a certain kind of fun, and then you pay it off to people.
Right. And we both enjoy extraordinarily different game experiences and consider them to be fun. And it's not that one is more fun or less fun than the other. It's that there was a setup that was like, okay, we're playing like football, but it's Tron and it's going to be an abstract game. And you're like, okay. And then when it delivers on that, you're like, wow, abstract football that's like Tron is amazing. But if you tried to do that whilst telling me like this is going to be like a Counter-Strike, sort of modern combat, arena duel, I'd be like, well, this is crud.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, that's been a fun chat about Ludonarrative Dissonance and the places where mechanical rules maybe break away from the sort of fronted experience of engaging with a game. I think this is one of the things that is just so central to writing games. but still it's one of those tricky things to figure out what level you need it to be at and where you need it to be, and where, because you need to let it slide to some degree and how to let it slide. I'm sure it's the sort of thing we'll come back to in many different forms in many conversations, because it's a big slippery banana of a subject. For now, why not stop down to the comment sections and tell us about your big slippery banana? You know, are you struggling with either a game that you like but that doesn't match up to the story behind it? Is there a story you're trying to tell and you can't quite find the mechanics for? While you're in the comment section, punch the like and subscribe buttons, because we want you to, and it's a good thing and makes us happy. Drop yourself into the Discord, and there's a lot of people.
It doesn't actually make us happy. It simply operates the machinery of YouTube. Thank you.
I mean, it makes me a little happy. It tells me whenever someone subscribes, and I go, "Oh, somebody subscribed."
Glenn's big on vanity metrics. Actually, we're getting. I'm not sure what the situation will be like when we hit this particular video's release, but we're getting close to 1,000 subscribers. People, this is.
I know. I'm legit excited to see.
What will we talk about as a celebration of 1,000 followers? I don't know yet.
Who knows? Possibly, depending on how these things come out. This was what we talked about: celebration of 1,000 followers. Yeah, stop by the Discord. Either way, I think it's going to be a sign off on this particular subject. So it's going to be thank you and goodbye.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye.